Welcome back to the Rundown Lab, where we break down and fact check the biggest videos and podcasts. We know your time is valuable, but when you can, we recommend catching the full video by the Diary of a CEO. Links are in the description. Here's an interesting finding for you. What if the disease most likely to end your life doesn't announce itself with obvious symptoms, but quietly begins decades before you ever notice a problem? That's the central premise of a recent episode that's been making the rounds. In this episode of The Diary of a CEO, the guest discussed cognitive decline, Alzheimer's disease, exercise, and a wide range of lifestyle factors that influence brain health over a lifetime. The conversation covered everything from resistance training and VO2 max to hormone replacement therapy, creatine supplementation, and blood pressure management. There were roughly 20 distinct scientific claims made throughout. So let's walk through what they got right, where things got complicated, and where listeners should be cautious. Let's start with what they got right, because there's genuinely a lot of solid information in this episode. The description of the twin leg power study was impressively accurate. This refers to the 2015 study by Steves and colleagues, which found that among identical twins, the one with greater leg power had better cognitive performance and larger gray matter volume a decade later. That's a real and striking finding. The discussion of VO2 max as one of the strongest predictors of all-cause mortality is also well supported. A large 2018 study in JAMA, analyzing over 122,000 patients, confirmed that low cardiorespiratory fitness is a remarkably powerful predictor of death, rivaling or exceeding traditional risk factors like smoking and diabetes. And the account of the SMART trial, a real randomized controlled trial showing that resistance training 2 to 3 times per week improved cognitive function in people with mild cognitive impairment and slowed gray matter atrophy, was largely on point. It's a genuinely important study published in 2014. The historical account of Auguste Deter, the first documented Alzheimer's patient examined by Alois Alzheimer, was also substantially correct, though her name was slightly off and she was 51, not 52, when symptoms began. Now, where things get more complicated. A number of claims in this episode were directionally correct, but included details that were a bit off. Take the discussion of creatine. It was described as something you can use to essentially overcome sleep deprivation, and as protection against concussion and stroke. There is real preliminary research showing creatine may partially offset some cognitive effects of sleep loss, and there's early evidence of neuroprotective potential after traumatic brain injury. But the framing was far too strong. You cannot, as the episode suggested, simply creatine your way out of sleep deprivation. The harmful effects of sleep loss go well beyond what any supplement can address, and much of the neuroprotection evidence comes from preclinical or very small studies. Similarly, when discussing the Norwegian 4x4 interval training protocol, the description was mostly accurate. It does involve 4-minute intervals at 90 to 95% of maximum heart rate, and it is widely considered highly effective for improving VO2 max. But the recovery periods are actually 3 minutes, not 4, performed at about 70% of max heart rate. A small detail, but worth noting for anyone trying to follow the protocol. The discussion of interleukin-6 as a cancer-fighting molecule released during exercise was also mostly right, but it omitted an important nuance. When released from muscle during exercise, interleukin-6 does appear to have anti-tumor properties, but chronically elevated interleukin-6 from other sources, like inflamed fat tissue, can actually promote tumor growth. Context matters enormously with this molecule. And the claim that 30 minutes of aerobic activity can reduce the risk of 13 types of cancer accurately reflects the landmark 2016 pooled analysis by Moore and colleagues. However, prostate cancer was named as one of the most prominent examples, and it is actually not among the 13 cancers identified in that study. Breast and colon cancer are, but prostate cancer is not. Now for the biggest red flag in this episode, The claim that 95% of Alzheimer's cases could have been prevented because the disease is driven by lifestyle, not genetics, is a significant overstatement. It's true that only about 1 to 3% of cases are caused by rare deterministic gene mutations, but that does not mean the rest are purely lifestyle driven. Twin studies suggest Alzheimer's is 60 to 80% heritable, with many common genetic variants like ApoE4 contributing meaningfully to risk. The Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention, which represents one of the most comprehensive analyses on this topic, estimates that roughly 40% of dementia cases could potentially be prevented or delayed by addressing modifiable risk factors. That's a meaningful number, but it's a far cry from 95%. Additionally, the discussion of the SPRINT trial contained an important error. While the trial did support intensive blood pressure control, and the SPRINT Mind sub-study did show a 19% reduction in the risk of mild cognitive impairment, the claim that intensive treatment preserved gray matter is actually contradicted by the data. The imaging component of SPRINT Mind found that intensive blood pressure lowering was associated with greater decreases in total brain volume, not preservation. It did slow the progression of white matter lesions, which is a different and more nuanced finding. So here's the bottom line. This is a largely well-informed episode. The presenter clearly has a strong grasp of the exercise science and neuroscience literature, and many of the studies cited are real, important, and accurately described in broad strokes. Listeners will come away with genuinely useful information about the power of resistance training, cardiovascular fitness, and lifestyle in protecting brain health. However, the specific numbers were often slightly off, some mechanisms were oversimplified, and the claim about 95% preventability of Alzheimer's significantly overstates what the evidence supports. As always, the devil is in the details. If a claim sounds too clean, too round, or too good to be true, it's worth checking the original research yourself. If you enjoyed listening, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons, and we'll see you in the next one.